If you were ever wondering what are some of the best places to put your camps down in Fallout 76, then this guide is for you. I will be going over my camping spots in every region of Appalachia and why I like to set up camps there. Starting off with the forest. So in the dried up riverbed near Flatwoods, you can find a copper ore vein, which you can set up a little extractor on. And copper is really important in the early game because if you don't have a whole bunch of copper, then you can't really build up a lot of electrical stuff at your camps. I would say this camp location kind of falls off for the late game because when you stockpile enough copper, then you probably won't ever need to go looking for it again, especially if you've already built up all of your electricity and everything. Another good thing about this area, the close proximity to the Vault-Tec Agricultural Research Center is also really good because these little pools in the back actually grow tar berries, which are, from my experience, pretty difficult to come across unless you really know where to look. This river right here that runs through Flatwoods has a surplus of blood leaves, snaptail reeds, and glowing fungus growing as well. Snaptail reeds can be used to make sugar at a cooking station. You can also farm fertile soil if you want access to some easy fertilizer. You can also find more fertilizer in this little area right here. Typically some bags of fertilizer spawn in this little shed right here, but somebody already looted them, so no fertilizer for me. There's a lot of silt beans in Flatwood as well, which is pretty cool because silt beans can be used to make silt bean soup for my fellow herbivores out there, which gives you a bonus to your endurance, which increases your health pool for my fellow full health builds out there. Now, some cons about this area, probably one of the biggest cons in my opinion, is right around this destroyed boat, you will constantly be fending off enemies. It's extremely annoying to deal with. You'll be constantly repairing your turrets and your stuff and everything. If you can stick it out for the early game, you can stockpile a lot of good stuff. Now, my favorite spot for a forest camp, unfortunately I don't have one set up here just yet, would be right over here near Holt Homestead, up near this destroyed shack with the beehives on it. There's a junk pile here, so you could set down your camp and set up a little junk extractor, which can produce a slew of junk for you over time, which is excellent for any stage in the game. The screws from some desk fans and the aluminum from some alarm clocks are going to come in handy for repairing your armor and building high-level turrets to defend your bases. The honey is also really nice from the beehives, but be warned, as soon as you start taking the honey, some bees will spawn and start attacking you. But the reason the honey is really good is because if you visit the giant teapot and speak with the Mr. Handy unit over there, named Sweetwater, he will give you a daily quest where he requests 10 honey a day, which is just an excellent bit of free XP and some unique alcoholic beverages that he gives you to increase your perception for any of you VATS builds out there. A couple other wonderful things about this location. This field down here has a slew of crops in it for the early game if you need some potatoes and corn to start planting at your base. But also, what's even better than that, cranberries. Cranberries can be used to make a variety of dishes, giving you 4 to 5 XP bonuses. Cranberry Cobbler is unlocked right off the bat, and it gives you a 5% bonus to your XP gain, 10% if you have Herbivore, like I do. Cranberry Relish is better, however, because Cranberry Relish gives you a 10% bonus, and a 20% bonus if you're an Herbivore. Now this little shed over here is a power armor spawn as well. So early game, you can try to find yourself a suit of power armor, but late game, you can come and nab some fusion cores and stick them in your fusion core recharger, and then you're good. Now coming to Holt Homestead itself is also really good, because sometimes when you come here, an event called Leader of the Pack will begin, where you have to kill 3 legendary wolves, granting you a legendary item for each one slain. And while yes, they may only be 1 star, you can go and turn them into legendary exchange machines for some free script. This picnic bench right here is a spawn for a random recipe, as well as some salt. This little house right over here has some more seasonings, and typically there's a bobblehead that spawns right under this cradle, but I guess it's not here for me, which is a little strange. This big house over here is pretty important too, because sometimes inside of this oven there will be a pumpkin pie, which gives you a 45-point bonus to your maximum health pool. There's a safe up here in the top floor, and you can for sure just harvest all the firewood piles for some extra wood. And then coming over to the final house of the homestead, this is where you'll find the recipe for Delbert's mud cookie, as well as some more sugar and spices and other cool stuff. That's why this is probably my favorite camping spot out of anywhere in the entire game. I would say the drawbacks to it is you're just gonna have to build up some defenses and everything because the bees may attack you, and you may also have to worry about the insects coming in from the field, but all in all, you should be alright. And so now, moving on to the Toxic Valley, my favorite camping spot in the Toxic Valley would have to be located right here on the map, in whatever we would call this area. Dried Lake, I'm not even sure, to be honest. This is because there is an acid seep here that you can put an extractor on to harvest waste acid over time. You can also stick a water purifier in the little puddles as well. Get yourself some water. There's only radiation in certain areas, and if you know how to craft it, you should make a decontamination arch, or have a high-level friend craft you a decontamination arch. But yeah, some pros about this place would be the acid seep, and well, you can stick a water purifier on the little puddle and everything. But the proximity to this large lake is pretty cool as well, since sometimes you can find like a mirelurk queen or something in the center. Aged mirelurk queen steak is excellent for anyone who's running carnivore. There's also some gold ore veins right over here in this little pit that you can harvest as well. I've actually never noticed that until I just walked over here. One of my favorite things about this place is a free fast travel location up inside the Toxic Valley. It also has a close proximity to Hemlock Hole's maintenance, which is a workshop that has 3 acid piles that you can stick extractors on. And for those of you who didn't know, whenever you harvest ore or minerals from any veins or deposits or anything, you actually need to smelt them down in a chemistry station, which takes acid to do. And if you're not careful, you will end up with like hundreds of thousands of ore with not enough acid to smelt them all, and then they're sitting there just stuck, taking up space, taking up more space than they would if they were smelted down into their scrap components. There also seems to be some squirrels that spawn over here, but I haven't paid enough attention to know if this is a guaranteed spot to farm for tasty squirrel stew, so don't quote me on that. Moving on to the ash heap, if you come right here on the map, this little outcropping of rocks right above abandoned mineshaft Elaine. The edge of this little cliff right here is an excellent spot. There's an iron deposit here that you can set up a little extractor on. I understand steel is fairly common, but the bigger bonus is the proximity to Mount Blair, which is a workshop that, once claimed and powered up, can produce a wide variety of minerals and ore. And now, moving on to the Savage Divide, my favorite camping spot would have to be right here on the map, located just north of the Emmett Mountain disposal site, and typically I just set up a lot of water purifiers here in this lake. There's no real extractors that you can make here. However, alcohol is a huge part of my build, and if you just run through this pine forest and look on the sides of the trees, you can find glowing resin, which can be used to make vodka. You'll also find yourself some aster as well, which is really good for making steeped fern flower tea from my fellow herbivores. Obviously, some cons of this location, there's not really a resource node to put an extractor on. If you looked around in the wilderness, I'm certain you could find something. However, I mainly use the water as my resource or whatever because I typically just harvest the purified water. I sell what I don't need, and I make drugs with the ones that I do need. Now, as for the mire, my favorite camping spot here would have to be right up here on the map, just to the north of Thunder Mountain Power Plant. There's an oil seep here that you can build an extractor on to get yourself some free oil. It's also really close to the Thunder Mountain Power Plant, so if you're running a power armor build, or if you have a Gatling laser or something, you can get yourself a lot of fusion cores. And last but not least, we have the Cranberry Bog. My favorite camping spot here would be this location right here on the map, just to the north of the Veiled Sundew Grove, next to the highway. There's a junk pile here that you can set another junk extractor on. You can also get yourself some diseased cranberries and probably some digested goo from the pitcher plants as well. But my favorite thing about this location would absolutely have to be this little shack underneath the highway. Exploring this long, extensive cavern underneath the highway, you'll find a surplus of brain fungus, which is exceptionally good for me as an herbivore because brain fungus is one of the primary components in crafting brain bombs, which is an extremely powerful intelligence-boosting food. And if memory serves correctly, if you run herbivore flower, along with strange in numbers, and you pair up with teammates who are also mutated, brain bombs will increase your intelligence by 9 points, increasing your XP gain exponentially. The proximity to Abandoned Bog Town is also a nice addition, because Abandoned Bog Town has 3 different concrete nodes, and I find myself running out of concrete quite frequently, actually. Oh, and one final thing about this location is if you check out these clusters of trees across the Cranberry Bog, you can get yourself some mutated fern flowers, which you can use to make steeped fern flower tea if you're an herbivore like me. Let me know what your favorite camping spots are and why down in the comments, and that way we can help all of the new players who are just dipping their toes into this game, or who are just getting a little bit experienced after playing for a month or two, of places that they could potentially put up their camps and everything. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed rest of your days, your nights, and your everything in between. And I hope you all learned something. I hope this helped you out. And I'll catch you all later. Mwah.